Are a lot of scenarios for which you want to maybe verify what the user is entering to make sure that it fits your program, often just to satisfy a situation or to make sure your program doesn't crash. So we'll create this program called Input Verify. And in this program, we're going to be verifying that the user is inputting actually what we ask them for. So we'll just have n here. We'll start with this as a value that the user will be entering. So what we want to do is we're going to see out, and I want to say enter a positive integer. So there's a bunch of applications for this. If we want to make sure that they are entering like something that is 1 or higher, we're going to do that. So we're going to cn n. Now, what we want to do is we want to verify that they're actually giving us a positive integer. So that would be 1 or something higher. So in scenarios like this, where we're not really going to need to decide whether or not we're going to ask them, we are guaranteed to be asking them, and then we're going to check after the fact. This is a scenario where you want to use a do while loop. Okay. So we're going to put a while condition on this, and we are going to do this. So remember, this is like an if statement. So if this is the case, we want to loop. So if they don't give us a positive integer, then we want to loop. So if n was any number less than 1, we will want to loop this. So it'll just keep going until we enter something positive. So I'm going to run the program. So we'll just test out how this works. Okay, enter a positive integer. So I want to put in the number negative 45. So it's saying enter a positive integer. So I'm going to put in a 0. And then I'm going to put in a 5, and then it will finally be satisfied with that, and I can carry on with whatever I was actually using that integer for. So I'll just insert a space here to make it look nicer. So this is fine. However, to tell them that they have done something wrong, because I don't know how many times you've had an error message pop up and you just ignore it and then keep going. It might be a good idea to inform the user about what is the problem. So for these loops, often it is a good idea to put in an if statement that matches the while condition. So if n is less than 1, then what we're going to do is we're going to see out error. I like using capital letters for this just to show that it's something like a little bit different than the regular output. So error, not a positive integer. However, I do know that it does look like I'm yelling, especially when I add these 3 exclamation marks. Okay, here we go. So we're going to run this program, and so it's going to say enter a positive integer. I'm going to put in minus 45. So it tells me very loudly, error, not a positive integer. I'm going to put in a 0, not a positive integer. I'm going to put in a 12. And then I can carry on with whatever that integer was used for. So we'll do one more example, and this one will be interesting. Now, what if we have a scenario where the user doesn't enter the enter what we're looking for correctly, or they misread the question and they enter in, let's say we enter in the word hello, and then we'll see what happens here. Now, what happens is I've got an infinite loop. I better stop this program because it goes inside the loop and it doesn't know how to process text. It puts the it essentially puts like a 0 in the number, but it also causes a bunch of other errors. We're not going to get into exactly like how much it actually messes your program up. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a check to make sure that they have actually given you a number. And we're going to do this in a separate section here. So I'm going to do this underneath just to distinguish. This is a common thing that we're going to do. The second one here is a little bit more complicated. So we're going to keep n, and we're also going to use a Boolean variable for if we have to repeat our loop here and ask them again, because this one is going to get a little bit more complicated than the previous one. So in this one, we're going to do pretty similarly. We're going to put a do loop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do this while repeat equals true. So we're going to put a check in here to see if we should repeat the loop. This is actually like sometimes used for you have multiple conditions, or it's very complicated to figure out if you're repeating and you don't want to make a while line that it is like 3 lines long. You might use a strategy like this. So what I want to do before the loop starts is I want to assume that repeat is going to be false. So I'm going to just sort of set by default. Okay, let's plan on not having to repeat this. I just noticed that I'm going to have to actually have that inside my loop. So repeat equals false here. So at the beginning of the loop, I'm going to say, let's be optimistic. We are not going to repeat this, and then let's see if we actually have to. I'm going to use the first couple lines here. So I'll enter a positive integer here. And you know what? I'm going to just switch this and make it easier. Enter a number. I'm not going to be so picky with what they enter. So we're going to cin an n. Now we have to do our work to see if what they gave us is a number or if it's text. So if it's text, what happens is it puts cin in kind of an error state. So usually use the word false, or you can use an exclamation mark. Remember when that is for like a not equal. So this is an interesting line of code. What we're going to do is we're going to check to see if not cin. So what's happening here is this little command checks to see if cin is kind of like in an error state. Because they gave us the wrong input in this scenario. So what we want to do is step 1, cin.clear. So removes error state from this. So cin will begin functioning properly. And then the second thing that we have to do is way back in the course when we used getLine, sometimes there's \n's or extra stuff left in the input stream. So we've got to use cin.ignore 100, comma, and then we'll go for a \n here. And then what we can do is in this situation where cin was put in an error state, then unfortunately we have to make repeat get the value true. As I write this, I realize that up above here that should be a single equal sign, so make that adjustment as well. And then it will know that it needs to do some work here, and then I'll put it at the end, your number was, and then we'll display it and go end L. So here's how the program works now. I'm going to run it again. So enter a positive integer. I don't want to mess up on this state, so I'm going to put 42. Now for the second one, I'm going to enter a number. So I'm going to put in 5 just to show the functional version of this. Hey, my number was 5. Okay, so let's run this again. I'm going to put in 42 for the positive integer. And for the number, I'm going to write hello. And then what it does is it repeats the question. So what it's doing is, and I'm just going to go through this step by step again, it will put C in an error state. This line will kind of reset it. It's going to wipe out any junk that we've got left over in the input stream so that we'll be able to ask the next question successfully. And then it sets repeat to true, so it knows that it has to repeat this loop. So a lot of this is really useful for when you want to verify that the user has input the thing that you actually wanted them to input.